Hi, welcome. It's my weekly live stream. I'm trying to do them once a week these days. And so I've been cooking up quite a lot of online courses lately, and also getting ready to teach this weekend. I'm teaching about the neurobiology and the subtle body this weekend here in Asheville. So I've been doing a bunch of research and spending way too much time sitting here in front of my computer, by the way. I really am looking forward to next week and getting out and taking lots of walks and doing lots more yoga. So anyway, I thought I would do a live stream today. I'm just waiting a little bit till some people come on because I announced it and people said they were coming. And I have a few questions from students as well, so I'll talk about them. So, yeah, I've been wanting to explore this topic, neurobiology and the subtle body, for a while, and here's the reason why. I've been teaching about the chakra system and the subtle body since, oh gosh, like 1995 or 96 or something. And very interested in the topic. I've spent a lot of time studying it, lots of time practicing with my system also. But I tend to come to this topic from a psychology perspective, not from a neuropsychology or a neurobiology perspective. So that's what has compelled me about this study. Is I thought, I've been looking into neuroscience for the past 10 years and what's underpinning the mechanisms underneath the yoga practices, how they affect the brain, how they improve the nervous system. And really, as interesting as that stuff is, I started to understand I have to talk about this in terms of the subtle body, because clearly the central nervous system and the central nervous system and the sushumna are going to have something in common with each other. They have to. In fact, the subtle body is, I would say, an ancient map of the central nervous system, and with a lot to say about the autonomic nervous system particularly. Hi, Mitzi. I'm glad you're here. So the subtle body is the ancient way of describing the central nervous system, with a lot of information about the autonomic nervous system. So what's the difference? The central nervous system is, you could say that's sort of the biggest frame. You can see these pictures of the nervous system. The central nervous system is like the biggest frame, and then from that central nervous system, we have, somatic, peripheral, and then from I think it's out of the peripheral nervous system, we get the autonomic nervous system, and that goes into sympathetic and parasympathetic. It's kind of, it's this whole schema that the biologists draw. But the piece that's important about the autonomic nervous system is that we can have some control over it. Largely, it's automatic, it's autonomic, it's automatic. So your temperature, your breathing, your heart rate, your metabolism, your digestion, hormonal functions, all that stuff is happening below the level of consciousness. And what we know from neuroscience is that 95% of what the brain does is below the level of consciousness. So, what then we have these stories like of Krishnamacharya or Swami Rama, and other great yogis being able to control some of these autonomic functions. And then you start to think, well, maybe science doesn't have it completely figured out yet, and that there is capacity for us to have more autonomic, more conscious control over autonomic functions. I think that's a fascinating, rabbit hole to go down. But I want to get to some of the questions, and I try to limit these to 15-minute sessions. So I'm going to get to some of the questions in a moment. Let me just say a couple other sort of big picture framey things, which is that, so as I mentioned, I first was looking at the psychology of the subtle body, and now I'm looking at both the psychology and the neurobiology of the subtle body. And the second thing I want to say is this: if the framework that we have used in this culture, the framework of scientific materialism, was accurate, then we wouldn't have all the health problems that we have. Okay, so that doesn't mean that scientific materialism isn't a piece of the puzzle. Of course it is, but if it was the whole picture, then we wouldn't have, you know, the massive amounts of chronic diseases, mental health problems, and addiction that we're currently faced with in our culture. Because whatever problem you have, where you see its origins is going to dictate how you address the problem. So if you see the problem as pain and you give opioids to treat the pain, that's, you know, then you end up with an addiction crisis and you're scratching your head going, why isn't this working? Well, because you're understanding pain from the perspective of scientific materialism, when in effect, something like pain, and the reason I'm talking about pain, by the way, is because that was one question. Something like pain, what the research has started to demonstrate, the broader research has started to demonstrate that these are not exclusively biomechanical processes. They also involve the mind, and they involve family structures, they involve culture, they involve our social position. There's so many factors, these social determinants of health, so many factors involved in why somebody has chronic pain or persistent pain. So, you know, to go back to this idea, if we look at the human, so scientific materialism looks at the human structure as if you're basically a car that's somehow broken or missing some chemicals or fluid, and if we can fix all that balance stuff, you know, change the broken part or put some other fluid in there to fix it or some other chemicals in there to fix it, then you'll be fine. And it's just an incredibly small, narrow perspective on human existence. What the subtle body gives us is a non-materialistic perspective on human existence, on human ontology, and a non-materialistic causal flow of our problems. So if we think our problems are caused by, you know, something chemical, something that we have to fix, like you don't have enough serotonin in your system, you know, and we just dump the serotonin or the selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors into the system and think that's going to solve depression. The problem is that we've come from an extremely tiny, narrow definition of what human beings are. And because our definition is tiny and narrow, that's why we can't solve the problems from that system, with that system. I hope this is making sense. So what I'm suggesting is the subtle body offers us a more expansive perspective on human existence. It takes that central channel, that central nervous system, and it expands it. It expands it into a broader definition of who we are as human beings, and it expands our ideas of causality. What causality is? Just what causes our problems, right? So that's one of the things I love about studying the subtle body, and about using it as a way to reinterpret or expand our definitions, our scientific materialistic definitions of what this system is, what this body, mind, spirit is. Okay, so with that in mind, you know, what traditionally people have done who are trying to explore the science of the chakra system is go, oh, you know, your crown chakra is associated with your pineal gland, and your third eye is associated with your pituitary, and your heart and your throat is the thyroid, thymus, you know, adrenals, pancreas, you know the deal. And what I would suggest is that's a reductive perspective, because, you know, scientists used to talk about the nervous system, the endocrine system, the immune system. And now it's the neuroendocrine immune system, because what we're seeing is that human beings operate in systems, nested systems, and everything is affecting every other part. So when I look at the subtle body, I'm not just looking at pineal, pituitary, thyroid. That's interesting and useful, but what's much more interesting is hypothalamic, pituitary, adrenal axis stress. What does that do to the system? How are the chakras working in coordination, and then creating function or dysfunction in the system, right? What about the hypothalamic, pituitary, thyroidal axis? How is that affecting the function of the thyroid? metabolism, stress, right? Because that's also interfacing with hypothalamic, pituitary, adrenal axis, hypothalamic, pituitary, gonadal axis, second chakra, gut brain axis, third chakra. So there's this whole new understanding of the nervous system as nested systems that is opening up the way that we can understand the chakras beyond the sort of reductive glands that are related to each chakra. Another key piece, and so that's what I'm going to be talking about all weekend in this workshop. Another key piece here is oh, there's so many things I want to say, but I got to talk about it for 2 days. So here, just for 15 minutes. I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought. But anyway, so I was talking about the nervous system and how that's related to the chakras, and then I was going to say something else and I can't remember. But oh, I know, here it is. Hello, menopause brain, it's coming back. So the other key piece I wanted to say was that we tend, as Westerners, because we come from the scientific materialistic perspective, we tend to say, oh, here's my body, and this is where my sixth chakra is, and this is where my throat chakra is, and this is my heart chakra. When actually the yogis would say, no, 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 here's your subtle body, and from the subtle body, your physical body manifests. So your chakras are not in your body is in your chakras. And that also is another shifting paradigm that I think is so useful to think about. My body is in my chakras. And so if I go to some of these subtle body techniques, which include asanas, which include pranayamas, which include mantra, which include mudra, bhavana, visualization. There's so many different of these techniques. We go to these different subtle body techniques and we start to tweak the vibration of the pranic energy. That can have the effect on the physical structure. If you're thinking in those causal terms, it makes sense. And it also helps for me to sort of see past a lot of the fluffy chakra dogma that's out there, because there is a ton of fluffy chakra dogma out there, right? I remember walking into Barnes and Noble like 15 years ago, and on this table there was this big table set up, and there were all these little kits, and it was balance your chakra kit, and it had like an essential oil and a stone and a card, and it was $11.99. I was like, $11.99, balance your chakras, that's a great deal. It completely minimizes the importance of this system. And what I think we are going to see within the next 10, 20, maybe 50 years is an awareness that the subtle body is the causal structure of the physical body, and that sound and vibrational healing it's the cutting edge of medicine right now. Not right now, it will be. I think it is right now to some extent, but it's still really kind of fringe. But sound and vibrational healing, because sound and vibrational healing go into the subtle body structures, and from those subtle body structures, from the subtle body vibration, we can shift the vibration of the physical structures. Right now, it might sound like a little woo-woo, Asheville out there stuff, but I think it won't. And I think partly it sounds woo-woo because there's so much rainbow dogma chakra garbage out there right now, and it minimizes, or it just detracts from the import of the system and the potential to utilize this system to make really significant changes in the way, not only in our personal health, but in the way we see health in general, right? To move beyond that scientific materialism paradigm that you are a car that's broken and you just need the right part or the right fluid or chemical to fix you. And that system doesn't work, which is why we're in a huge healthcare crisis in Western countries. 87% of the money that we spend on healthcare, which in the United States, by the way, is $3.4 trillion per year. 87% of that goes to chronic diseases, right? And Western medicine has very poor success rate at chronic diseases. Very good at, if you break your arm or you have an acute problem, emergency medicine, that's great. Chronic diseases, not that good, and we look to systems like Chinese medicine and Ayurveda, they have much more success rate with chronic diseases because partly of the ontological perspective that they take on human existence. So they take a much more subtle perspective on what we are as human beings. Okay, so let me get to some of the questions. Thank you all for being here, by the way. Yes, Mitzi, your chakras are not in your body. Your body is in your chakras, according to the yogis. Okay, so let me get to some of the questions. And if you have any questions, I'll stick around for a few more minutes. If you have any questions, I'm very happy to address. So let's get to, these are some practical questions here. Carol asks, let's see, she's dealing with a lot of pain and having to take medication, and she wants to know how to get the prana flowing. Seek answers in the subtle body. The gross body needs help at the subtler level. Yes, I agree. Would love to have prioritized suggestions. Well, of course, I can't work with you, like on a one-on-one therapy session. That would take me, 75 minutes or more, but I can give you some short answers about pain. In terms of pain, we do want to help people we want to help people find places in the body that are not in pain, so that we're changing the messages that are going up to the brain. So what's critical, I'll just say, to prioritize, what's critical when you're working with chronic or persistent pain is to make sure that you're prioritizing self-care and you're spending 15 or 20 minutes a day trying to get the sympathetic nervous system activation to decrease. So that might be legs up the wall, that might be a different restorative pose. It might be increasing your exhales. That can be really helpful. Just very slowly, gradually exhale to 3, a few times to 4, a few times 5, a few times 6. That might be helpful. And then making sure that you bring awareness into parts of your body that are not feeling painful, finding parts of your body that are feeling good, and because that's going to send messages to the brain that it's not a global thing, that the whole body's in pain. Pain is really hard, and I think there's a lot of things in yoga that can help. I have an ebook I wrote called the science. What's it called? I think it's called The Subtle Secrets of Pranayama. And it's just I don't know, maybe 20-page ebook that gives some very very subtle and visualization practices that you can use with pranayama. So it's not aggressive pranayamas. I think sometimes we get really aggressive with our pranayamas. So I hope that's helpful, Carol. And feel free. We can chat more about it if you wanted to do a private session. Paula writes and says, I've been wondering about ways to calm vagal tone. I can see diaphragmatic breathing and some pranayama might be a path, but wondered what else. Oh my goodness, Paula. Like, that's the whole point of my teaching. I should say it's part of the point of my teaching. Calm vagal tone. So actually, I think what you would say is improve vagal tone. I think that would be like a little more accurate scientifically. Improve vagal tone, or calm the sympathetic part of the nervous system, and increase activation, improve resilience, increase activation in the parasympathetic part of the nervous system. So let's talk about some things for vagal tone. Just some brief interventions. I like to talk about brief interventions when I'm doing things like this, and also when I work with mental health clinicians, because brief interventions are a way to think about just, what can we do in the short term that can help? People are struggling so much, One of the things I think that is really useful from the yoga tradition for vagal tone, for improving vagal tone, there's so many things, but one thing I think is really important is interoceptive practices. And that means finding creative ways to help people to notice positive or neutral sensations in the body. So the course that I'm coming out with, the Yoga and Neuroscience Connection, is filled with suggestions for that. My trainings are filled with suggestions for doing that, because it's not as simple as notice how your body feels. Although that's a great start, but it's not as simple as that. There are many progressive ways to get people into sensations in the body. So I do think, and research is demonstrating that developing better maps and more map differentiation, which means the brain has better maps of the body and also differentiates sensations and parts of your body. I think yoga is an amazing way to develop that skill set and to help people develop that skill set. And I think that that's an incredible tool for improving vagal tone. So belly breathing, yes, belly breathing is great, and belly breathing is only one tool. And if belly breathing is done without an interoceptive awareness, then you're sort of negating the benefits of it, right? So there's so many different ways to get into belly breathing, and it's not the only tool, and it's not the only way to breathe. There are many other ways of breathing. And frankly, I find helping people extend their exhales to be even more beneficial than belly breathing. But it depends, of course. But that I find that to be one of the most effective techniques, and even adding a little bit of an inhale at the top. Oh my gosh, I didn't mean to stay on for 21 minutes. Thank you all for being here, though. I've got one more question, and then I'm going to wrap this up. So Marie wrote and said, incorporating gentle ways to bring more awareness to the pelvic floor for more grounding in the system, alternative to Mula Bandha. Mula Bandha, it's like belly breathe. It's not the only technique. There's lots of other things we can do. So one thing I've been working with lately, Marie, is constructive rest, where constructive rest. So you're lying. Let's see if I can do it here. So you're lying on the floor. You can see me. Just with your feet up, like this, maybe knees resting. So constructive rest is a great, I just dusted the floor a little there. Constructive rest is a nice position to get into for interoceptive awareness of the pelvic floor, because what happens is your lumbar spine goes into a little bit more of, it's not flexion, but it goes into neutral, right? So you take the curve out of the lumbar spine, goes into neutral, and then you can feel some more spaciousness in the pelvic floor. And what I love actually for pelvic floor breathing is I start my students at lumbar spine breathing awareness, and then move to sacral breathing awareness, and then move to pelvic floor breathing awareness, with the inhale letting all the diaphragms do this on the inhale, and the exhale just a softness. So the inhale can be an opportunity not to push, but to allow the diaphragms to open. The respiratory diaphragm as well as the pelvic diaphragm, letting that open. So that's one way I've found to be quite useful in working with the pelvic floor. But pelvic floor, there's like it's a whole field of study. Everything is a field of study. Oh my God, there's so much out there. Okay, so I better wrap it for today. For those of you coming to my workshop tomorrow, I'm looking forward to seeing you. For those of you who signed up for my yoga and neuroscience connection course, it's on track, and we are going to release it, I think, at 12 a.m. on Tuesday morning. So we're really excited to get that rolling. Thank you all for the feedback and for the support. I'm really so happy to get to share this, and I'm so happy that so many people are responding and excited about the course too. Okay, thank you for being here. Namaste. I'll talk to you again next week.